off right away?
Yeah, we'll jump right in. We had started last night with some of the capital improvement projects. We wanted to talk about some that are currently in progress. They're not necessarily on the capital plan that was submitted for a few reasons that we can talk about, but these are the things that are currently ongoing. And James, if you want to fill us in, or one of your staff.
Yeah, I think certainly the Clearwell project is a very well-known project, we'll say, in the community. As far as the CIP approval year, it's been in there for several years. The project itself started probably about 5 or 6 years even before that, with preliminary engineering and design work. With the significant amount of time that the Public Service Commission took reviewing our application for authorization to construct, that's pushed back our bid date. We did finally get that authorization the end of June of this year. At that point in time, our design team had to get back together because obviously they hadn't touched the plan since the previous October. So they are working on that. It's getting everything ready, and we are going to have that out on the street for bids in November, with a bid award coming to council in January of '26. So we are still moving forward there. The tertiary filtration phosphorus project at the wastewater treatment plant, that one hasn't been in the CIP quite as long as Clearwell's, but certainly has been talked about for a very long amount of time. We are in design phase right now. We're in between kind of the 60 and 90% design phase, working with our consultant on that one. We are currently scheduled to go out for bids in that one in February of '26, with bid award coming to council in March. One of the things that has been added in the 2026 capital improvement program is the ultraviolet light disinfection at the wastewater treatment plant. That will replace our gaseous chlorine disinfection, which we currently use. Gaseous chlorine is a significant risk that we have at the plant. Part of our risk management plan, we have a 1.3 mile radius around the plant that is at risk should there be a chlorine leak. That includes things like Lourdes, Oshkosh West, all of University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, all of downtown. So it is a significant risk. When I spoke with our fire department's hazmat team about the possibility of us removing that risk from the plant, to say the individual I was speaking with was giddy about the change would probably be an understatement. They are excited about the chance of removing that risk from our community. So that is new into the capital improvement program for 2026, but it is being done with the phosphorus project. What it also does is there were several chlorine projects that have been, some that were previously in the CIP, some that were coming up in the CIP. All of those will then go away with the approval of the UV disinfection project in the CIP. So there will be some other outer year CIP updates that will take place once the UV is approved. But with the work we were doing with our design consultant, they came to us and said, look, if you're gonna think about doing this, the best time to do it is with this tertiary filtration project. And that was something I sat down with the city manager and went over, and she said, yeah, get it in the program and let's get moving. That is just a huge risk to remove from our community. Moving on with the water meter test bench, we do have a requirement from the Public Service Commission for testing water meters. Our existing water meter test bench is very outdated, relies on a lot of manual reading of small pitot tubes, and sometimes if you're 5'3" or 6'3", you get a different reading from the exact same test. That poses a challenge. So we're working on getting that all replaced with one that is much more automated, some water storage tanks that are a little larger to meet the requirements of the Public Service Commission for conducting those tests. But the biggest thing is, not only are you eliminating the potential manual error from reading, but also right now, okay, you take the reading, you write it down, you go over, you put it, you enter it in a couple places. So that data is touched so many times, there's just so many places for error. The new system will be automated, computerized. You're taking all of those potential errors out of the equation. That work is, I think, started on the design phase, right? I'm looking at Jason and Steve for that.
Yes.
So-
Working on trying to get an agreement set up with Jacobs right now to do some of the structural calculations for the floor and plate floor modification. So we're working with Jacobs right now just to get a services agreement to do some modifications for the structural bases that are needed for the tanks and that, but yes, we're moving forward with the design.
Okay. The Washburn Booster Pump Station, I'm not sure if council is aware, but there's a section of the city, kind of generally speaking, west of I-41, south of 20th Avenue, that operates on a different pressure zone than the rest of the community. Elevationally, that is, I'll use my air quotes here, the high part of the city is, elevationally high as we are here in Oshkosh. Just from a pressure standpoint, we're unable to provide adequate service volumes and pressures out in that district without the booster pump station. That has been in place for quite some time now, and we are at a point where we got to do some work to the booster pumps themselves and looking at getting some replaced. Jason, Steve, I don't know if you have anything additional you want to add in on that one, other than I know we're going to get started on that yet this year, but it is going to carry over into next year.
Yeah, just that Jacobs Engineering has the agreement through our utility services technical agreement, and they're working on it.
Okay. The collection system inspections for wastewater, we have some very large diameter pipes in the collection system, particularly with our river crossings, that we just do not have the ability to inspect. We can't televise them. The flow is just way too significant for us to be able to manage and bypass. So those systems have not been inspected for a very long time. One of the primary river crossing interceptors that is near campus, probably Rockwell Avenue, I believe is where that one crosses the river. That one did have a substantial structural failure in the mid-90s, to the point where we were sucking fish in the river into the treatment plant. So it was slip lined at that time, but again, that's 30 years ago already. So we do need to get some inspections on those large assets, especially, like I said, with those river crossings. If there's a failure in the river crossing, the river water flows directly into the front door of the plant. I believe you guys were pulling carp off the bar screens back in the mid-90s when that happened. I don't know if you were...
I was not there, but we have some old Polaroid pictures of the dump truck loads of gravel that they pulled out of the pumps.
So those are some old assets that require some very specialized technology to conduct the inspections. And unfortunately, that's been the reason why the project has been moving very slowly, is because of the specialized nature of the technology that's required. And there have been a lot of changes in that technology occurring too. So it's kind of trying to pick the right time to use the right technology to get the inspections done. Steve, I don't know if you have anything you want to add with that one?
I can just, a couple of the technologies we evaluated is one is they essentially launch what was about the size of a softball or tennis ball down the pipe, and it tracks everything, and then they have to catch it on the other end before it gets to the plant. So it's that was one of the alternatives we were looking at, and in a 30-some inch siphon, we weren't quite sure how we were going to catch that. So that quickly ended that methodology of trying to figure out how to get through there. So those are some of the challenges that we've been running into with that.
It's a very unique set of infrastructure that poses some interesting challenge with how do we make sure the pipes are still sound and solid so we don't have another failure. It was very interesting, the failure that happened in the mid-90s. I mean, you could see a vortex in the river where the failure of the pipe was. It was spinning and sucking the water from the river into the plant. It was very significant. As far as updating the dump site at the wastewater treatment plant, we've got a spot where not only the street sweepers dump their debris, but also the jetter vac trucks dump. It's a debris pit, especially with the street sweepers and the fine particles, sand. That has posed some challenges with the wastewater treatment plant operation as far as the influent gate valves in particular, right, Jason?
Yes.
You get the sand and particles in, and the valves don't close and don't seat, so then you can't perform some maintenance activities. So looking at getting some design work done to look at relocating where the street sweepers dump so we can remove that maintenance challenge from the wastewater treatment plant. The city does own property right across Dempsey Trail from the wastewater treatment plant, so that is one of the locations that we are definitely looking at having this work done. So I think we just recently executed an engineering services agreement on that one too. That's Donahue, I think, correct?
I'm still working on RFP.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay,
yes,
so working out the
in
details yet,
works.
okay.
And then I think Jim talked about the transit facility last night. So these are the process ones. These, just wanted to highlight things that from when we first talked about the CIP between then and now, some of the things that we either took out or we delayed a lot to 27 or 28, just because we have some review of the structure going on, so we didn't necessarily want to invest in a lot of equipment. So this is just a list of all those items that we delayed either to 27 or 28. If there's any questions on that. And then here's some other changes. The police vehicles and the taser, which the chief talked about last night, those are actually moved into the operations budget. The police vehicles were in there already. They're paid for with levy, so, and they're not really capital because they don't last 10 years. So that's why those were moved to the operational budgets. And then some of the fire things, I'm gonna go ahead and purchase now because they're smaller items. These were some of the things that were reduced. I don't know if there's anything significant that you wanted to talk through, James, here.
No, I think one of the big things is we talked about with the street lighting, city-owned street lighting on street reconstruction projects. We did eliminate that from projects for next year. We are going to continue to look at some other projects, corridors, gateways, for example. I think a good example of that would be Bowen Street, that is going to be done in 2027. It is a continuation of previous projects on Bowen Street. Bowen, while not necessarily identified as a gateway, it really is an entryway gateway type of a street. So that is one that we will continue to look at. Plus, Bowen, being constructed through the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program through the DOT, we're already too far down the design of that one to be able to remove that. But it really felt like it should stay because of the nature of Bowen Street and tying it in with the rest of them. The rest of Bowen Street that we've already done. But as far as Ohio Street, 16th, Scott, we removed the street lighting. There is still some traffic funding in there, in particular with Ohio Street and South Park Avenue. That signal needs a lot of work. I think it was only partially reconstructed several years ago when that work was done on Ohio Street. So the electric division, we got to get some more conduit. We got to do some things with that signal. So there was still some traffic money left in there, but it did reflect a lot of the removal of the other streetlights. At the same time, I also asked Justin to go back and re-review the estimates that were put together based on where we were seeing some of our bidding numbers coming in from, and Justin did feel comfortable reducing some of our budget estimates based on what we were seeing for construction costs this year. Obviously, when we first start putting the CIP together in February, March, we have information, but we're still kind of feeling some of that stuff out. So as we were kind of narrowing down and trying to fine tune the budget estimates for the capital program, I did ask Justin to revisit that with what we were learning on this year's construction project. So that's where you see a lot of those other things, reductions coming from. But the big ones like Ohio, Scott, 16th, that's street lighting reduction.
I do want to take a brief moment to say thank you for that. appreciate the willingness to review the project, and it's significant dollars, and it's debt that can be used for something else, if or not. We could also choose to not take on that debt, but just reallocating that to other high uses, taking that out of there is much appreciated. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
And then the last one is the buses. I think we're pushing off purchase till 29 or 30, can't remember.
I think a lot of the reduction was going with clean diesel instead of going to electric.
Yeah.
Sorry, just for clarification, when you say removing street lighting, what do you mean?
We are not going to be installing city-owned street lighting. The street lighting that goes back in place will be utility-owned street lighting as it is right now. So it'll be your Cobra heads on the WPS or AT&T owned poles, whoever owns the poles on those streets. But rather than going with the more decorative black lighting, black poles that we have been doing on a city-owned infrastructure. Yes, there will still be streetlights. It'll just not be city-owned streetlights, it'll be utility-owned streetlights. But as I mentioned, Bowen Street, kind of continuing that look of Bowen Street being more of a gateway, plus the design was so far along when that one comes in. That one will still have the city-owned street lighting. So again, it's being a little bit more strategic about where we do it, rather than carte blanche doing it.
Yeah.
The ROI on the cities versus WPS was like 50 years, so
Yeah.
it was pretty
An
significant.
easier choice to make.
Yes. Yeah, as Jim Collins and his staff took a closer look at what his staff had previously done, they identified some differences in that really changed the payback.
And then Sarah mentioned last night that we had combined some of the different projects for community development into two categories. So those were the changes that from June till yesterday. So now we can jump into all your different divisions.
Yeah, I think, what remains here, we're looking at street and sanitation, so kind of the field operations area, just vehicles. I believe some were delayed and shown on the delay screen. These are kind of the ones that are remaining yet. And if there's any questions, I'll certainly defer to Ryan on some particular questions, but certainly a lot less than was, I think, originally discussed back in, I think, was there June, there was some information shared, Julie? Yeah, so, and that was highlighted on the delay screen earlier. I think we are, from a sanitation standpoint, we certainly talked a lot last night about the amount of time it takes to get equipment with the fire trucks. Ryan, I think we've got some trucks that we ordered in 22 and 23 we're still waiting on.
Yeah, we actually have 6 trucks that are going to be delivered starting order in early 22 on through 23, and side loaders and a couple rear loaders. So it's taking some time to get them, but hopefully they'll show up here shortly.
So some equipment that was ordered in 22, 23 is going to be showing up at about the same time as stuff that was ordered in 24. So it's kind of like the log jam is starting to break loose a little bit.
Yeah.
Utility infrastructure, this is where the big projects generally fall. You see our street reconstruction projects and our larger utility projects showing up here, as well as several of our annual programs. Asphalt, concrete, upfront work. I don't know if we've talked about that a lot, but we do a lot of upfront engineering work to try to reduce uncertainty and potential change order costs on construction projects down the road. We do significant environmental review. All of our construction projects go through a phase 1 environmental review. We do soil borings to try to identify, if they're, trying to identify rock, but 2, if we think there's a potential environmental hotspot, we'll do a soil boring right in that area to take samples right away. Because if you hit an unknown contamination during construction, you're generally looking at 4 to 8 weeks of just putting that stuff over on the side and having to trip over it while you try to figure out what's in it, get a landfill to agree to take it. And so several years ago, we started putting this upfront work, environmental, geotech, even historical, we work with UW Milwaukee Cultural Resource Management Group to review all of that prior to submitting for construction permits from the Department of Natural Resources. And all of that saves us in delays and potential change order costs during construction. Some of the projects where we've had to do it, it's real hard to look at a homeowner and explain to them, yeah, that pile of dirt that's been sitting in front of your house for a month is going to be there for another month while we are still waiting on lab results for it. That's a tough conversation that I won't say completely eliminated, but I'll say virtually eliminated with all of our upfront work that we do. I think we're very unique too, as I talk to other communities and some of the people we work with. We're unique in the amount of work that we do upfront, but I firmly believe that it saves us a lot more on the back end in construction. Getting into our big projects, you see the street and utility projects that we've got planned for next year shown there.
Page 4, I have it on page 4, but the Oshkosh Ave Sawyer Street intersection. So we budgeted a few bucks for 2026 and 2027, totaling about a little over $1 million. But that bulk of the project seems to be out 7-8 years. Is $1 million over 26 and 27. I know we're trying to focus on 26, but is it design work, like preliminary stuff that we're going to spend that much up front, or what?
The idea there is to get the land acquisition. There are 2 parcels left to acquire. Get the land acquisition done and get the final design engineering done, so that when there is available funding in TIF 35 to be able to move right into construction. Originally, that was shown much sooner in the capital improvement program. However, earlier this summer, I was made aware that the Department of Transportation has a planned bridge maintenance project for 2032, and they also have a planned pavement replacement project on State Trunk Highway 21 from Washburn all the way to Murdoch Avenue, also planned for 2032. So I moved it to coincide with those department projects. If the department pavement project and bridge maintenance project split and go to different years, Justin's been pushing me hard to try to get this Oshkosh Sawyer done before the bridge, and I agree with him now that we've talked about it a lot. Once you get past Westfield, if you're heading eastbound on Oshkosh Avenue, you pass those signals on Westfield and you get to the bridge and the Sawyer intersection's closed, you got nowhere to go. You got to try to turn around in the neighborhood and get all the way back to Westfield. Yep. So there's a lot of wisdom in getting that intersection done in advance of the bridge project if the DOT's pavement maintenance project is not going on at the same time. If the DOT's pavement project is going on at the same time as the bridge, it makes the most sense to do the intersection while it's all closed down rather than closing the street multiple years. So we are playing a little bit of a scheduling game with the DOT at this point in time, but we're wanting to get that design work 100% complete, so if things change at the DOT and we've got the money in the TIF, we can move quicker to get the construction done.
On that front, the money in the TIF part, we should be able to react. The TIF is performing well. Is that fair?
TIF 35, yes.
TIF 35. So when the time is right, we should be able to react appropriately, even if it was much sooner, for example, a couple of years sooner, we should be able to react to that positively.
I do believe so, yes.
Because the funding should be there.
We were originally scheduled, I think, for 27 or 28.
I thought so.
So we were going to try to get it in before the Oregon-Jackson Bridge. So we want to get that done before the bridge got done. So we were going to be just before that, but since the project, we did slide it back. So it's really kind of in limbo until we get more.
And I get the sequencing, and it's not all within our control. So,
and that's part of the struggle. Like Justin said, we originally wanted to go in advance of Jackson, Oregon, but then when I found out the DOT was planning on closing Oshkosh Ave just a few years later, I'm like, that just doesn't make sense to close this thing down and then a couple years later again. I just didn't like, for lack of a better word, the optics of closing that area down a couple times in a couple years. But if those DOT projects do separate based on, state funding, yes, we want to be having everything done so that we can move quickly should that situation arise. Yeah, I think here, we're really getting out into the outer years beyond, other than you brought up the Oshkosh Sawyer intersection, Mayor, so thank you, that was on the next page. But like I said, that is to get final design and acquisition finished up, so we can be nimble should the need arise. Storm, not a lot of big projects there right now, mostly equipment. The leaf blowers and the backhoe. Ryan, I don't know if you want to touch on any of that. That leaf blower, is that tied to one of the trucks?
Yes, yeah, that's tied to one of the tandem axle trucks.
So we should double check to make sure that tandem axle truck hasn't moved yet.
Yes.
So
Definitely should check.
we'll have to double check to make sure the tandem axle truck that's tied to didn't move. Because if the truck moved, then we'll move this. Getting into sewer, we've got, and we talked a little bit about the tertiary project earlier. Some of that is still showing up here because we did have funding spread over several years. We've got some HVAC work. We lost the years on the top. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just was trying to follow it. So the generator project as well, that is tied with the tertiary filtration. Because of adding filtration and UV, we're adding a lot of electrical load, so we do need to do a lot of work with the generator. So again, the generator work is tied to the UV, which is tied to the tertiary filtration project. Other than that, we've got some pump station work that needs to get done. Shorewood, that's north side, that's what, getting some of the valving and stuff out of the wet well and into a little hut.
Yes, yep, and that'll be done next year, for sure.
Moving into water, our meter change out, as we said, we got Public Service Commission requirements for meter change out and meter testing. We use ammonia and chlorine gas at water filtration. We talked about the chlorine gas being eliminated at wastewater. Unfortunately, that is not something we can eliminate at water filtration. So as part of our risk management and safety plan, we do got to get scrubbers. If you're not familiar, a scrubber, if there's a leak, what the scrubber does is it neutralizes that gas before it can vent to the atmosphere. And then getting started on some planning for backup intakes. As council may be aware, we had some challenges with the Department of Natural Resources as far as cleaning our primary intake. We have also, in 10 years that I've been in this role now, in 2 winters, we have had a frazzle ice situation freeze and block off our primary intake. So we need to have reliable backup intakes. We do not have reliable backup intakes at this point in time. We are using infrastructure that is 80 plus years old, and
Almost 100.
is not capable of supplying full flow. Thankfully, in the wintertime, we generally use less water, so we've been able to get by in the situations that we have had. But if we're in one of those situations and there's a high demand fire flow, I don't want to be put in a situation where I can't supply that water. So we need to look at doing something to get a safe and reliable backup intake, and that's starting the design efforts. You see some construction money a few years further out.
What drives those events where, is it like super deep cold environmental conditions? Like what is driving that?
Frazzle ice is certainly, as you start, depends on when you get cold. If you get an ice layer across, I believe as ice crystals start forming, if it gets very windy and the water starts turning, then the water column starts freezing, and then those ice crystals, our intake's only in 13, 14 feet of water. The lake itself is only 23 feet deep at its deepest. So it is very, very easy for ice crystals to form in that column all the way to the intake and then freeze and block off the intake. We are looking at doing some changes in that primary intake itself to hopefully help reduce the likelihood. But as I said, I've been in this role for 10 years and I've had 2 winters where I've had that situation occur.
If I remember
That's a lot more often than I'm comfortable with.
If I remember right, you were one back flush away from sending fire out to dive it in the middle of winter, if I remember correctly, a couple years back.
In both instances, we were in that situation. The first one was in the winter of 2015 into 2016, and fire department had the dive team and the boat lined up, ready to go, just waiting for us to make sure if it worked or not. Part of the challenge is, there's about a mile of 60-inch pipe, so by the time we realize that we're not getting water through the intake, it froze up about 8 to 10 hours ago. So when we start pumping water back into it to try to force water off of it, well, we got to do that for about 8 to 10 hours. Then we start drawing from it. It's another 8 to 10 hours before we know if it worked or not. So, it is a delicate situation. And yes, in both instances, it was a very quick call to the fire department to say, we've got a situation. We may need you relatively quickly. Please start being prepared. And they've been great to work with on that. I know nobody likes to go diving in December and January, but they understand that if we don't have water and they have a fire, they have a bigger problem.
That's pretty much all the.
A couple of questions. You had a slide regarding previously approved projects, and I know I've sent a couple messages and we've chatted about this a little bit, and you still haven't sold me as to why these projects aren't in this budget. And I think one of the reasons may be we've already approved it and you don't want to open up the can of we may not approve it again type of scenario. And I don't think that's actually going to happen, but we haven't started the work. We haven't bid for the work. That's actually before the starting of it. We haven't taken out debt for it. And yet it's not in here to say in 26, we're actually not going to take on $72.3 million worth of projects. We're actually going to be working on $150 million worth of projects. That's not complete and accurate to me. And so somebody hasn't explained that well enough, I guess, as to why they're not in there. I don't need an answer tonight, but it's still bugging me that, especially these two big, the Clearwell project alone, that's a huge thing, and it's not here. And for some reason, I think it should be. So I don't need an answer tonight, but it would be nice to get an answer that I understand. So, again.
I'll take a stab at it.
She's willing to take one for the entire public works team.
Well, I think it's been a combination of items, and I think that's probably why you haven't had an answer to your satisfaction yet. Because one of the issues that I've seen since I've come here is once it's in the CIP, finance puts the entire approved budget into the ERP software. So when Public Works or Transit or any other department, they look at Munis, they see they have the budget. So in their minds, why would they put it back in the CIP when their budget's already in the software? And it's one instance that I've seen many times, but is in the past, we haven't, as the finance team, done a very good job of tracking. It's been very much, we want to track what we enter into the budget, make sure it matches the CIP. So Clearwells, for example, right now in Munis has a $90 million budget. Because every year Public Works put it in the CIP, finance just put that number in the ERP software.
And never cleared out the old.
So I am taking ownership that finance needs to do a better job of tracking. If the project goes into Munis, don't just let it keep rolling forward, because if they budgeted, any department, not just Public Works, if they budgeted for it in 1 year and it didn't happen, then it makes sense for them to put it back in the CIP for a future year. And finance isn't eliminating that initial budget, and it just keeps accumulating. So I think finance has a job of cleaning it up, but it's also the process of at what point do we put it back in the CIP. I think Clearwells is one that we easily can, and I can make that adjustment. But if they think it's going to be bid out or anything before year end, do they put it in CIP? Like if they don't know timing, I think that's part of some of the hesitation. I know we had some conversations with certain departments this year, like going, why are you making me put this back in the CIP? And I said, well, are you gonna have it by the end of the year? So there are some things that you'll see that I put prior year funding for as the funding source, because I was like, if you know you are not getting this until 2026 or 2027, we're putting it in the CIP. But that was also a conversation as a, well, when are you gonna have it bid? What phase are we gonna be in? And we made some of those decisions in June. So there's room for improvement. I will agree with that.
Second question. You're not gonna have an answer tonight on this. Rate impact of these utility projects. James, you and I spoke a couple months back, maybe a month or two back, about, in the past, council hasn't had the opportunity to know what the rate impact will be of your utility projects before we approve them. When we meet in a couple weeks, we will know the impact of all projects and all operations on the tax levy. We get to make an informed decision on what we're passing on to the taxpayer that night. And if we don't like it, we can attempt to mitigate that or change that or some way impact that. It has historically been, we approve your utility projects, and then in April, basically, you come to us and say, oh, by the way, we need to increase the rate to pay for that project or a past project, and here's now the impact of that. And a new council gets seated, and they don't like that, well, they have no ability to have changed that. It's already, right? So how do I know what $75 million worth of utility projects is going to do to each of the rates that we have to charge our residents and our businesses? I don't know that you're going to be able to answer that before we approve it this year. Room for improvement as we continue this process year after year, but it would be nice to know, if we do this in an aggregate, here's the estimated impact at the next rate case. And I know that's difficult, but we pay a really good consultant to do difficult work for us to try to give us some ballpark figures of the impact.
In some years in the past, that's been a part of a completely separate workshop that was, strictly focused on this part of the CIP, and we usually had Mr. Cameron here with that preliminary analysis. Timing and things have changed over the years, as you mentioned, and that's I think something that we need to talk over and figure out how we can get that information back at this a time that we used to be able to give it to you at that time. I don't know what happened as far as our communication. That was, we've had some changes here, and we just got to get back on that page.
I think it's fair for us to ask what the impact of that is now, and then we could have the ability to then say, do we have to do that now? Can we do, that we get to ask, we have the ability to ask those questions in the time frame that can actually impact it. And I think that's important for us when we have to make the case that this is the cost of providing clean, safe, reliable drinking water. This is the case for you to be able to flush your toilet and know it's going to go somewhere and get treated properly. So I appreciate you taking that feedback, and I hope, like I said, I don't know that we're going to be able to have anything this year. I do hope the process can continue to evolve, or go back in time to what we used to do. Everything comes full circle, right? So I appreciate you taking that feedback. Last thing, stormwater laterals as part of, it was under the utility, that, I think it's under that one. 500 and 525. It had been internal practice, from my understanding from previous city manager, that we installed stormwater laterals as part of every project. We go down and do a reconstruction, everybody's getting one. And we're only charging $750.
Correct.
So we charge every property $750, residential properties, right?
Correct.
$750 for a stormwater lateral. I happen to know we're doing some projects in the campus area, for example. I don't know if a single one of those things is going to get used. And yet we're going to spend a significant amount of money to install those into every property. And I'm not sure of the effectiveness of the dollars that we're requiring our taxpayers to pay for that. So I'm trying to balance like the good of the whole for the entire stormwater system of the entire community versus we're making people, and they don't even have a chance to opt out. And we're only charging $750 when we know that it costs closer to $5 or $6 grand probably per property to install. So there's a couple parts to that.
Yeah, and if I may, it's, the benefit is not for the stormwater utility. The benefit is for the wastewater utility. A common response we'll hear from people is, well, I don't even have a sump pump, I don't need that. That means all your clear water from your foundation drain is going into the wastewater system. That is illegal. You need to have a sump pump. We have not gotten to the point where we have established a private side inflow and infiltration policy to start requiring and more actively pursuing those disconnections. So clear water inflow and infiltration into the wastewater system is illegal by state code and our municipal code. It's just we have not gotten very robust in that avenue of pursuing the private side inflow and infiltration. It's something we've had on our department plans to start working on. Okay, how do we look at putting something together to get some feedback from council on how do we want to go with this, and then how do we develop that robust information education campaign so people understand why it's so important that those properties that don't have a sump pump, you're contributing to a problem in the wastewater system. So yes, it's the stormwater utility that's
I'm billing for it, but
funding, I'm not subsidizing, that's the word I'm looking for, but it is to try and get that clear water out of the wastewater system where it needs to be removed from.
And I think ultimately the goal would be is that, well, yes, we're not seeing high compliance of being used today. I think needing to move forward with getting private side I&I reductions being critical, these will become more useful to property owners once that domino gets tipped.
And the time to install it, the most cost-effective time to install it is during those reconstruction projects. This particular one line item is for requests that people submit to get one installed. Because there are a lot of situations where people who do have sump pumps are discharging those in such a manner that it creates a public health and safety hazard. Icing and algal growth on the sidewalk is a prime example. In that case, the plumbing inspector issues an order for them to cease and desist and lets them know, hey, by the way, there is a program available through the stormwater utility where you can get a lateral, you can have your sump pump discharged safely and alleviate this health and safety concern.
appreciate the info. That's all I got.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay.
Then we were going to talk a little bit about the fund balance. We mentioned this briefly last night, so let Julie get into this.
I also sent an email to council today about this, but it references the fund balance policy. The fund balance policy says the general fund balance should be between 16 and 30%. So that first line shows that the fund balance projection right now is at 35%. However, what I wanted to emphasize and what we talked at length about last year during the budget process was all these special revenue funds listed on this chart are heavily supported by tax levy. So, for instance, the internal service fund. Public Works is here, so I can pick on them. No, just kidding.
You took a bullet for them before.
But this is one that we have struggled with. So finance and public works have worked very closely on this in the past and going forward. And I think Ryan has been a huge help in getting this fund straightened out going forward. So I think we're to the point that this internal service fund should be a net zero fund. There should not be a fund balance. As you can see, we are in negative $2 million fund balance right now, which means when this project initially started, the internal service fund wasn't charging the other departments enough, that it ended up in this negative position. So the majority of those departments that were not charged enough are probably in the general fund. So at some point, I'm going to be asking the board to do a budget adjustment to transfer money to this internal service fund to basically get them back to zero. With the budget that Ryan put together, we should be pretty much 0-0. We want to wait until the year end 2025 see how that flowed out, so we kind of have a better, clear picture on what that ask is going to be. But that's a prime example of, even though the general fund looks extremely healthy, there's some of those other underlying issues that we do have to solve, and the general fund is going to be the one that needs to bail it out.
And I think, one of the hiccups that occurred with that fund, the first year in the garage that it happened, nobody was charged for fuel for an entire year. The fuel used to all come out of the central garage general fund account. It got moved over to the internal service fund account, but nobody anywhere in the city that used fuel was charged for fuel that entire year. It was an oversight that I think wasn't caught until the auditors came and asked, where'd this all go? And we all went, oh, shoot. So just some hiccups.
Right.
Some things we learned.
Another example that I think I provided to council was like Pollock Aquatic Center. They've been running a negative fund balance. They are very heavily funded by tax levy, so when I suggested moving them into their general fund this year, general fund is transferring, in the proposed 2026 budget, general fund is transferring $102,000 to eliminate the deficit in the special revenue fund. So those are just some of the examples that I was using, but the idea behind this analysis is these are the funds that are very heavily reliant on the general fund. So even if they do remain as a special revenue fund, it would be, I think it's beneficial for the council to look at it as a big picture on when you're looking at just the fund balance percentage. I think the reason why this came to light so much last year was we moved ambulance out. We moved about $6 million of expenditures out. We left the fund balance, so the fund balance percentage increased. If you look at the big picture, which would be that total line item, if you're looking at all the fund balances combined and all the expenditures combined, then we're at just under 28% for projected year-end 2025 fund balance, which is just under our 30% maximum threshold. So I think that is still excellent position for the city to be in. And then on the additional analysis side, I kind of played with what the 2026 proposed budget is looking at, transferring some of the fund balances to the general fund. It's also looking at the potential fund balance drawdown, and then even then we're still looking at 26%. So again, very healthy fund balance, but I think we really wanted to bring it to light because there was the conversation last year about, well, we're over our 30% threshold. But in the big picture, are we? So that was kind of the conversation. So any questions on this? I know it's a lot of numbers.
And for those who may be listening, hopefully, right? We do hope some people listen and watch. The reason we care about fund balance is we need to be able to react to a variety of different scenarios that could present itself, right? We could be in a fuel cost. Salt during the winter runs, we have a horrible winter and need more, those types of things. It could be some sort of economic development activity that presents itself that if we didn't have cash, we wouldn't be able to necessarily move very quick on those types of things. It's healthy to have that. Additionally, on the finance side, it helps to be able to cash flow everything and not have to take out short-term debt to run operations. So there are lots of reasons to have a strong fund balance. I know I think I got here 7-8 years ago, it was weak. It was low. We've worked to improve it dramatically to make sure that we can react when needed and be able to invest as needed. And also, I didn't like we did it last year, but that we were able to impact the budget in a way that positively affected the residents of this community to weather an interesting, evaluation period. So that's the reason we want a strong fund balance. We don't want to overtax and underspend purposely. That's not a good position to be in or a good thing to be doing. But we're also not sitting on $4 or $5 billion at the state. So if they want to share some of that, feel free to. Anybody's listening and has impact with them. So good work to continuing to manage it, to maintain it, it's important that we do have a strong balance here.
Yeah, to your point, Mayor, you don't budget for the worst-case scenario, you budget for the typical, and your fund balance covers those worst-case instances.
Last night, we talked a little bit about next steps and hoping that the council would consider the capital improvement program at the October 28th meeting. There's several reasons for that request, but instead of maybe going forward with the whole things, to just allow more questions or clarity to come, we wanted to take out the things that we were really concerned about having considered and hopefully approved by October 31st, and those just want to take a few minutes to talk through those, if that's okay. The first is the convention center. In the 2026 capital request, there's $2 million for a refresh.
Why don't I do this?
Is it up here?
Yeah, this is the next slide. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, thanks. So that, it was last done in 2017. We have a new hotel. They're under the Marriott flag. There's certain requirements for being under there. So this would be for new carpeting, paint, wall coverings, AV equipment, furniture, door systems, lighting, acoustical tiles, window treatments, AV, restrooms, kitchen, upgrades, IT, and more. So the state has a non-state grant program going on that they would match up to $2 million for application. So this is one of the ones that I wanted to put in for that. I think there's only $50 million for the whole state. But I wanted to be able to put in for this, and you need to have the fact that it's approved by the 31st of October in order to do that. Another one that we have talked about, we have a contract or an agreement with Grand Oshkosh to contribute $5 million match once they get to fundraising of $5 million for upgrading the facility, expanding it. I think the council is somewhat familiar with the project. It includes updating the lobby restrooms, making it ADA accessible, generator, windows, doors, theater seats. I don't know if anyone sat in the seats. They're not necessarily comfortable for people of this day and age. Wallpaper, new facade, 2-story addition, all of those things. And so this, if we are able, we had contributed, or we're going to contribute $5 million. I'd like to put in for this, so then maybe the taxpayers only have to put in $3 million if we would get that. And then the final one was the Joint Public Safety Training Center. This is something that we were looking at, just doing a fire training facility, but then there's also a need for a police training facility. This offers the opportunity for them to practice for both departments and train in those facilities. There's a lot of different benefits that I can't necessarily speak to because I'm not in the police and fire department, but we could talk about them again on October 28th. But this was one of the 2026 request is $4 million. So this was another one that I was thinking of putting in for. Obviously, the more that we put in, I mean, I don't think we're going to get 3 approved, but these were the ones that I thought might be. Another one could be the 41 pedestrian bridge, but I think we're still figuring that out. So I just wanted to go over those, if there's any questions on those. Otherwise, those will be splitting apart on the 28th council for consideration for approval for those different projects.
So one, from council side, do we have questions on, these 3 or 4 happen to be Rebecca's highest priority to get our blessing on because of the grant timelines. So getting our blessing on those is desired, but if we don't have questions on the remaining CIP, it's also okay that we present that, or that is presented to us on the 28th, and then we vote to approve that night in its entirety if that's what we want as well. So if we have questions, we need to make sure we're asking. If we don't, it may be best to bring the whole thing. The only question that is a follow-up from a comment I made last night regarding the allocation of specific dollar amount for the fire training. So is there a way to approve? It's in the plan. I don't like the number because I don't like the number, but yet I don't know the requirements of the grant writing. But how creative can we be with how it's budgeted within year 1, year 2, year 3 of a project type timeline? I'll leave that up to you. And again, no answer needed tonight. I think that was just a kind of a follow-up from last night's thing I said. But
it's so like right now it's in there for 12, right?
14.
14.
4, 5, and 5.
But like if it comes, can you write the grant and then it comes back at 8 and we approve that? Or does that handcuff you to a 14? Like
I don't think, I have to look at the details, but I wouldn't think it would, but I also would not think it would be less.
But
Just being realistic.
Yeah, fair.
So just creativity on that in terms
Yeah.
of how it looks in here.
Yeah.
I think you get the gist of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we would.
Can
I don't. Yeah, you were having something, but I don't have many questions on those specific ones, or even really many of the others at this point.
The only other consideration, we were going to come as staff and talk about the pedestrian bridge on November 4th after the public hearing. So if you're wanting to go ahead with the full capital, maybe it's without that. That would be my suggestion. Otherwise,
Jacob's nodding ahead. We can do nodding heads now again.
It's a workshop.
Is that too early? Sorry. It's an inside joke. But that would be, if there are no other questions on the remaining CIP, I think that would be a fair way of moving everything forward, and then we just carve that one out. It can always be an ad.
And I haven't had a chance to talk with you about this, Rebecca, so I apologize, but I'm going to flop this out there right now. As you might remember from the late August council meeting where our original calendar had CIP and we had a resident come and speak at citizen statements because that was not on the agenda. I would like to, if we're going to go forward, I'd kind of like to know so that I can let everybody know that we sent a letter to earlier saying, hey, remember we said this, but the schedules have changed. Now it's going to be this. And if we are going to do that on October 28th, we need to get that letter out next week. So
You're referring to Somerset Way.
I'm referring to the individual from Clairville who came and spoke in August and said, remember he came to the meeting and said, well, I got this letter that said, this was going to be on the agenda tonight. You kind of like, well, what letter? And that's, when we send out notifications about projects, we include the calendar. It changed. I just want to try to make right by those residents and say, yes, we did previously tell you this. The schedule changed. Here's the new date. Sorry, I hadn't had a chance to talk to you about that yet, but I do feel an obligation to make right by those residents because we did tell them that.
Apologize for wanting to have good communication with our.
Darn you, James. I think that's a very fair point to point out. Somerset Way was also something the stormwater you guys were going to get back to us by budget time as well. I don't want
I think we
answer
did
tonight.
November 11th. I think we committed to on that one.
Okay, just. I think our reasoning was it has some budget implications possibly, but there's also budget adjustments as needed.
As you saw last night, we do budget amendments. We learned last night I got to have 5 people there to vote for it. But that is something that does happen semi-regularly with amendments, so.
I'm not seeing anybody change their mind in terms of bringing
Okay.
it to us minus that. Appreciate,
Bridge.
and then communicating appropriate with those that.
So then you can ignore the message about changing that, Justin, and we'll keep going with what we had planned.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We're looking out for the residents here. That's
Yeah.
very appreciated.
I just, like I said, I
Yeah.
felt an obligation to get them a new letter.
And obviously, we can still answer any questions if you
Of course.
think of some.
And this is, because normally in the past, the past couple of years, we approved CIP in like August.
Which,
So,
that was the calendar
Yeah.
that was originally out there that we
It's
followed.
just kind of
No.
a challenge when you don't know what the rest of the budget
100%.
looks like.
Not saying that was,
Yeah.
this is good and that was bad, or vice
Yeah.
versa, but just, yeah. Okay.
So, then, I guess,
And
we're,
Can I just ask one clarifying question? I think I know, but not everybody may. Convention Center, so you also mentioned, there's also state trust fund loans. Are we able to use state trust fund loans for like our part, to be able to finance our part instead of using cash? We've done that in the past where we've used the state loans, and then that's probably paid for with room tax dollars? That's the way that's been in the past as well? Okay. Do we have any current debt on the books remaining for?
Yes. For convention center, yes. I don't know the exact dollar amount, but yes, I know we do.
oh, and I forgot to mention about the fire stations, not that we needed them to be approved, but I think there were some questions about the renovation. And I don't know, did you get those answered?
I got my questions answered.
Okay, did anyone else? There's renovations for them to just modernize and update them. We don't have, they're not friendly for all of our staff. So looking at changing the living space for the sleeping quarters, shower facilities, restrooms. This is at Fire Station 15. Due to the enormity of the remodel, we have to put in a elevator.
That's a question I will be following up with staff appropriately on that part right there.
So that's why that price tag is $4 million.
That's probably a building code thing.
Yes. The other, fire station 16 through 19, we're just doing some refreshes in the restrooms and kitchens. That was $280,000. So, just,
I have a general question about 16. After I sent you an email offline earlier, this is something that came to me. The status of the roof on 16, I know that was in the condition report. If the ice that falls off that water tower, feels like the place is being bombed, literally. So do you think we can hold off on that for a while, at least for now? Or do you find that to be something that we'll have to do probably next year?
I believe there's funding for roofs
Generally.
yeah. I will have to get that answer for you. I know we're actively trying to find a different location for building a new facility,
Yes,
but
I know
I
that.
will double check with the roof.
That site search is still continuing, and then Station 14 is a different kettle of fish, which I can follow up with you later, which involves an external party.
Yeah, that, we are trying to have some discussions with the county on that.
Okay.
Is there any other questions regarding capital or anything we went over last night? I mean, we have the whole, I don't know, we're gonna go back to this options for consideration or the estimates or anything.
One of us should have acknowledged last night. So in the past, we haven't really even did a press release on the budget. And that, even just that little thing that we did with, hey, city manager and staff are presenting to council a budget that does this, this, and this, and here's some preliminary stuff. We haven't always done that. I don't think we've ever done that part. And that was well received in the community. And so, one, a nice update to how we communicate. Continuing to tell our story better has always been a thing, and I think that was a nice positive. But two, also, if you want to go to the, I think the next,
This one?
yeah, presenting us with a 0% option is a strong recommendation and much appreciated from the elected officials that happen to have to justify this and just this process and what we do and the tax bills that people get. So I am comfortable saying that the process wasn't easy to get to, and this,
No.
it wasn't, but much appreciated that you and staff went through that and did that for the taxpayers, for the ratepayers in this community. So just thank you for presenting a budget that we can really be proud of, and yet still meets the financial obligations that we need to try to, and the restraints that we have, and still yet moves us forward. Not only operationally, but, capital improvements too. So that's, for me, a big thank you for what was presented to us. And I know last night went fast, and there wasn't, it was, and there wasn't a lot of questions, but I think much of it also resides in that we do have a lot of trust and a lot of faith in what's being presented to us and the programs that we do and how we do it, and that you're going to get the best bang for our buck, and that those programs that we're doing are effective, and we're going to find ways to make sure we ask some more questions between now and when we approve it. But just a big thank you for what was given to us so far, and the effort that staff went to get that document to us.
Thank you. It was definitely a team effort. Everyone, Julie and her staff and all the departments really spend a lot of time going through things. Appreciate that.
Carl would say, he echoes that if he could speak right now. I'm sure he would.
I would use different words, but yeah.
Have anything?
Council, any specific, operations, or really Public Works is a large percentage of the operations and capital, and here's all the leaders if we need them. I see nothing.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
28th council meeting, we will see CIP minus pedestrian bridge for our blessing. And then we're working towards November 4th public hearing at 5, and then immediately after the public hearing we will have a workshop to discuss the pedestrian bridge and any other follow-ups that we have. Normally that would be a 5 to 7 if it may be short, but if we could have it on our calendars for a 5 to 7 that night, and the meeting it'll take the length of whatever it needs to take. So
That's a Tuesday, so plan commission will have to get cleared out quick.
I already talked with them and they said it shouldn't be a problem based off of the agenda.
Okay.
all right,
Just
nothing
it
else.
just occurred to me, so.
It
All right.
occurred to Cammie first and I was like, oh.
Good, she was thinking of us.
She was.
All right, appreciate the time. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you
Thank you.
the 28th.